More reaction on the gazetted regulations 17.8. We're joined by Elias Monage, President of the Black Business Council. Good evening, Mr. Monage. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, Regulation 17.8 has so far received mixed views. Before we even get to the intention behind the regulation and how it would possibly impact transformation around equity ownership, among others, specifically the historically disadvantaged individuals, let's start with what the law prescribes. Regulations are not independent of the Act. They give effect or expression to the objectives of the Act. They cannot deviate. What are your views on just the Regulation 17.8?
Evening, Mfundo, to you and to the viewers at home. I guess we need then to look at this thing within the current set of circumstances that we are then faced with as a country, where we should not look at this thing in a narrow, linear way, because this gazette from the minister come at the back of a recent trip to the US. And before even people, they recover from the jet lag, he then issued this gazette. He then basically confirms that the amendments are not meant for any genuine empowerment, but it's meant for a specific individual. So we don't create amendments or a legislation or regulations at the back of one specific individual. So as the primary objective of the broad-based Black economic empowerment is in the main at the heart of addressing the imbalances of the past, where historical majority of the people in this country were excluded in the mainstream economy. That's the first point. Secondly, if again we then look at the provisions of the Constitution, it then says government, in giving an expression to the provision of the Constitution, they need then to pass regulations and legislation that will then give effect to the process of addressing the imbalance of the past. Now, I'm saying to you, we need then to look at this within a broader context. And that context is when, at the back of the current set of situation that we are faced with as a country, we're then facing a number of things. Firstly, for the past 12 to 18 months, we've seen a number of individuals and institutions that they are parading that the broad-based Black economic empowerment need then to be abolished. That's the first thing. So these are the proponents of anti-transformation agenda in the country in terms of addressing the historical exclusions.
But they would challenge you on that. They would challenge you on that. Specifically, we just played a clip of Herman Mashaba. He would probably say he is a proponent of transformation. But in this instance, he has strongly stated that the problem is BEE hasn't benefited the majority of South Africans. So what is the point? And there are those that have been in support or proponents of it. But unfortunately, because it has only benefited a minority, they then feel perhaps it needs to be done away with. So what of that?
Mfundo, we need to address this thing in a proper way. So it doesn't mean that if the application in certain pockets of the country, it was done in a wrong way, and definitely then that does not mean that we cannot deal with the redress of the past. We need then to say what went wrong in terms of the execution of the redress. That's the first thing. Secondly, we need then to say what is the purpose and the intended purpose of the broad-based Black economic empowerment. And if some people in certain quarters, they are of the view that it benefited a few, we need then to address the rationale why it was it benefited the few. We need also then to say what are the instruments that have basically then bar or prohibited people then to benefit in majority.
But can we still be investigating why it benefited a few? Because on numerous occasions it has been stated that it was corruption. It's those within close proximity of those who actually hold the levers of power. That at times it's just that. There's nothing to investigate there, and
no.
many don't disagree with the intention, great intention most certainly, when it comes to triple BEE. It was meant to level the playing field for black South Africans, or broadly the historically disadvantaged groups. So in that instance, nobody's disputing the intention, but if there is no correct or fair implementation, then it becomes problematic. That you have individuals who are black who should be pushing this agenda, then denouncing it and saying we want nothing of it because it benefits a few.
No, that's not true. I'm saying to you, we need then to address what prohibited the majority of the people and the rest in achieving the objective. And one of those barrier for entry for majority of the people is access to funding. Because if we don't have funds, we don't have the what is called skin in the game, we cannot then participate in any broad-based economic empowerment. And I'm saying these are some of the levers, these are some of the barriers, these are some of the red tapes that are the consequences of a participation in any fora or in any empowerment deals that to date took place. And as a result of that aspect, you then have individuals that, because they have their access to funding, for whatever reasons, they're the ones that they then benefited. Even if we're then to go back to the first 10 years of the BEE, so to speak, there was this notion that they are the normal suspects, that they're benefiting and participating in those deals because they had access to funding. And those who didn't have access to funding, they continue to be excluded because they cannot then participate.
But sometimes the funding comes from government entities. Pardon me for interjecting there, whether it's the IDC, etc. It would be coming from government entities, but still the same suspects are the ones who get that funding. They all queue?
Because, no, I'm saying because they have skin in the game. If you don't have skin in the game, you cannot then participate. And that becomes a barrier for participation. And I'm saying we need then to address the mechanisms, the limitations and the constraints for people then to participate. The second part of the problem is that the gazette issued by the minister has nothing to do with the skin in the game. It basically is something that circumvents the current provisions in terms of the 30% participation, to say any person that comes in the ICT space, they need then to allow the local participation. That's 1, 2.
So that is in contravention with the Act, meaning that there will just be legal limitations for the minister here, if this is the desire or the intention, that the regulation 17.8 right now don't give expression to the Act. So we're hearing from others that what would need to happen is that you either amend the Act, but right now it's not coherent. It's just in contravention of the Act.
Mfundo, when you have people that they have the desire to circumvent, they will use other instruments. They will use an instrument called the equity equivalent. The equity equivalent has nothing to do with this thing. It's a different mechanism of bringing people back door without dealing with the empowerment, without dealing with the broad-based economic empowerment, without dealing with including people that historically were excluded. And this is the point that I'm saying to you. We need them to look at these issues holistically. Because whether it's Mashaba, whether it's anyone else that they're saying people that have benefited out of this thing, they are the same culprits. And I'm saying to you, we need them to deal with the source. The source of the problem is the limitations, the constraints that are surrounding the funding model. We need them to look at the different aspects and different instruments of dealing with this matter, so that we don't exclude people because they don't have the skin in the game. Secondly, we cannot then design any legislation based on an individual to say, here's this individual who wants to come into the country, because they are steadfast in terms of giving equity away or allowing historically disadvantaged individuals to participate. Let us then find something to bring them back door. And I'm saying to you, this matter is coming at the back of a recent trip to the US, where it then means the deal has been done in the US and therefore he must then execute. And I'm saying that cannot be right. And let alone the fact that the ICT space is something that, again, when government auction spectrum black people continue then to be excluded, because when you auction, automatically they're not going then to participate.
Now, the minister, on the intention aspect or the objective of the policy direction, it's stated that it's to encourage investment and innovation in the communication sector, among others. Is that not good enough a reason, perhaps, for some to say that here perhaps we must see some sort of a shift where not only the transformation agenda is prioritized perhaps, but the growth agenda as well? Because many always argue that those who survive in difficult times are those who are able to pivot at the right moment when they see conditions changing. So is this not perhaps a government that is showing that it's agile? They went to America and they saw the current conditions and felt that perhaps they need to pivot and change things a bit.
Mfundo, we don't have shortage of funds in this country. We have funds available that we can then invest. And I can just give you a classical example. We have pension funds in this country that they continue to invest in listed entities, not on unlisted entities. And that's part of the problem. Secondly, if indeed we wanted to deal with the question of unemployment, we want to deal with the question of training, we want to deal with inclusive economy, we want them to deal with how do we bring historically excluded people in the mainstream economy. We don't do that by continuously excluding them, by continuously moving on a trajectory that suggests that they will never ever participate in the economic stream of this country, and they're going to continue to be the spectators in the economy. That cannot be right. That cannot be right. We have, we have the Procurement Act that up until now, despite the fact that that act came into an act, it was signed by the president more than a year ago. We don't even have the regulation to this stage that deals with the set aside for women, the 40% set aside for women, to deal with the strategic procurement for historically excluded people. We don't have the regulation that deals with how then do we bring people living with disabilities. We don't have any regulation that says state entities, they need them to look at designated products that come from the local companies. We don't have a regulation that says we need then to implement various other components and instruments that will then continue to bring historically excluded majority of the people in this country. And I think for us in the Black Business Council, this thing is coming at the time when the minister is giving 30 days period for people to comment. And I'm saying it's coming at the time where we're approaching our annual summit next month. And I think this gazette is going to be one of the critical areas, because we will be encouraging all black formations in the country and people that they are pro transformation and broad economic empowerment to basically then participate. And if it means we need them to take the minister to court, we need them to do that, because we're not going to allow a situation where we are then going to continue and seeing things happening in our shores and we are then excluded. It's not going to happen in our lifetime. That's what I can tell you for free. And it's not a threat to anyone, but then saying we are going to be hosting the G20, B20 in this country, and we cannot then continue to be excluded in our own show, in our own country. The whole continent is looking at these issues. South Africans are looking at this thing to say, where are we heading? We cannot then continue to exclude people and come with some shady schemes. Whether we then talk about the equity equivalent, where we exclude people, I'm saying it's not going to happen. And the space economy is something that we need them to start looking at as a country. We need them to look at how effectively and efficiently can we then bring people then to participate in that space. We need also then to gear our education system and training to look at opportunities for the young emerging kids to participate in that space. But for us then to continue being excluded, I'm saying for us is a no. It's not going to happen in our lifetime. And that's the point that I'm raising with you, to say we need them to look at this thing. We are not going to see this thing taking a different tangent. Let alone the fact that the BE Commission we need then to amend that act for the commission to have the ability then to prosecute. Because these are some of the issues that we then have a commission that does not have the authority and the teeth to bite. And these are some of the issues that we're not going to see ministers. We're not going to be bystanders where ministers, they come with the regulation that circumvent the provisions of the Act and provisions of the Constitution in this country.
I suppose many citizens and formations such as yours will be looking to Tuesday to hear the minister when he comes before Parliament to explain what exactly is the intention, the objective, and whether there is no contravention of the Electronic Communications Act or misalignment thereof. But thank you very much, Elias, for joining us this evening. That's Elias Monage. He's president of the Black Business Council.